Welcome to the 26th edition of American Railway, our first visit to Maryland, situated in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. Maryland borders West Virginia, Virginia and Washington DC to the south and west, Pennsylvania to the north, and Delaware to the east. In the first half of this programme, we follow the CSX Transportation Metropolitan Subdivision towards Washington, from Knoxville to Rockville, with a brief excursion to view the Maryland Midland at Union Bridge and Keymar. After that, we concentrate on the more scenic locations on the Amtrak Northeast Corridor, picking it up at Seabrook through to Odenton and between Edgewood and Perryville. Before crossing Baltimore, we pay a brief visit to the CSX Junction at Relay. The CSX Metropolitan Sub runs from Weatherton to Washington DC. In the first part of the programme, the focus is on the western end of the sub, with locations at Knoxville, Brunswick and Point of Rocks, with a brief dip into the Cumberland Sub to the west to sample trains viewed from Maryland Heights and passing through Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Having just left Harpers Ferry, a pair of AC-44 CWs head east with rock hoppers. This spectacular view of historic Harpers Ferry from the overlook on Maryland Heights is very popular with visitors, locals and rail fans. The Potomac River flows under the train crossing into Maryland just before its confluence with the Shenandoah River in the left of this scene. In the upper left of this view are the folded sunshades with the Potomac Grill. Later in the day we found this an ideal place to take refreshments while continuing to watch trains. The four locos at the head of this manifest were an ES40DC followed by a C40-8W, then another ES40DC and another C40-8W. Soon they will be approaching our camera at Knoxville. English and German settlers began to populate the area in the late 1700s, and a village began to form on the road between Frederick and Harpers Ferry. The growth of the unincorporated community of Knoxville was encouraged by the arrival of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, the establishment of the industrial town of Weatherton just to the west, and by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad when it began construction of a rail yard just to the east at Brunswick. Three ES40DC locos and an ES44AH head east through Harpers Ferry Station, while our cameraman was eating his lunch. The historic town of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, will feature in a future edition of American Railway, which will focus on the CSX Transportation Cumberland Subdivision. Moving east to Brunswick, cameras were positioned near the station platforms on either side of the parking lot to capture activity on both main tracks. The former Baltimore and Ohio depot on the north side, now used by the Maryland Transit Administration, handles MARC westbound services with this B&O caboose nearby. MARC Train 873, the 3:30 p.m. departure from Washington Union Station, terminates here, with a dedicated connecting bus service to West Virginia, calling at Harpers Ferry, Duffields and Martinsburg. The loco is a GP39H-2, rebuilt from a Baltimore and Ohio GP40. On the south side, a westbound manifest is approaching the eastbound platforms. At the head, an SD40-3 led an ES44AH, another SD40-3, an SD50 and a C40-8W. Meanwhile, the empty stock is returning to the yard. An ES44AH AC44CW pair have just got their train of 130 loaded coal hoppers rolling and are about to power east through the platforms on the south side of the parking lot. We filmed the lead loco number 882 once before at Trompilo, Wisconsin, back in 2013. Originally, this area was home to the Susquehanna Indians. When the first settlement was built by Europeans in 1728, it was known as Eel Town due to the natives fishing for eel nearby in the Potomac River. John Hawkins was given a grant to the land by King George II in 1753. The name given to that grant was, apparently, Hawkins' Merry Peepo Day. When the land was sold to Leonard Smith 4 years later, it became known as Berlin in recognition of the many German settlers. However, the post office was unable to use that name as it had been given already to a place on the eastern shore of Maryland, so the post office used the name Barry instead. When incorporated in 1890, the name was changed to Brunswick, and the construction of the Baltimore and Ohio Railway Yard, which began the next year, swelled the population to over 5,000. The population today is estimated to be around 6,200. The station house on the north side of the parking lot was built originally on 7th Avenue and opened in 1891, but it was moved to its current location 7 years later. It is a contributing property to the Brunswick Historic District, placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. This is train 875, the 425 from Washington Union Station to Martinsburg, West Virginia. Continuing our journey east to make the most of the evening sun at Point of Rocks, cameras were placed near the western end of the parking lot and close to the picturesque station. The station building sits between the CSX Old Main Line Sub to the left in the foreground and the Metropolitan Sub curving away to the right. New platform shelters were built in 2008 for MARC commuters waiting to travel east towards Washington. The striking Gothic Revival-style station building, designed by E. Francis Baldwin, was constructed by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1873 and was placed on the National Register of Historic Places 100 years later. Despite being a busy commuter station, the building is not open to the public, but continues to be used by CSX Maintenance of Way for offices and storage. After we filmed this unit coal train trundling through Brunswick station, a pair of AC-44CW locos was added at the tail to provide distributed power for the continued journey east towards Washington. MARC Train 879 is about to arrive. This is the 5:40 p.m. departure from Washington Union Station to Martinsburg, West Virginia. this part of the programme we continue to follow the CSX Metropolitan Sub east as far as Rockville, with calling points at Pepco and Gaithersburg. We stayed overnight at Frederick, north of Point of Rocks, so before returning there to resume our journey along the CSX, we drove a little further northeast to check out the Maryland Midland shortline at Union Bridge and Keymar. Waiting to depart west with a train of cement are a Jeep 38-3 leading 3 SD40 M-2s. The Maryland Midland Railway operates over about 65 miles of track through central Maryland between connections with the CSX at Highfield, near the Pennsylvania state border, and Glendon, near the junction with Emery Grove. The headquarters is roughly central at Union Bridge, which has a population estimated to be less than 1,000. This was filmed from the platform of the Western Maryland Railway Historical Society, who have an impressive collection in the former station buildings. The guys there were very friendly and hospitable, so if you pay them a visit, please say hello from us. The lead loco was built in 1967 as a GP38 for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. The 3 SD40 M-2 locos were rebuilt from SD45s that began life for Southern Pacific in 1967, or the youngest, number 3448, for Union Pacific in 1968. At the time of filming, we were told that this cement train was probably the only regular working operated by the Maryland Midland Railway. Returning to Point of Rocks at about 10 AM, the cameras were positioned on the station platforms and near the grade crossing to the west of the parking lot, with an additional view under the US 15 accessed from the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Trail. The locos at the head of this westbound rake of 90 autoracks are an ES40DC and a grey C40-8W. the train is coming off the old mainline sub from the direction of Baltimore to join the Metropolitan sub here. From the southern banks of the Potomac River, or from boats on the river, a striking rock formation can be seen on the Catoctin Mountain that was formed by the river cutting through the ridge. The name of the town was taken from that rock formation. Although notable, it is fairly typical of the Appalachian Mountains. The community of Point of Rocks is unincorporated, but is a census-designated place. In 2010, the population was just under 1,500. The pair of ballasted ES-44AH locos hauling 80 loaded coal hoppers will take them onto the old mainline sub heading towards Baltimore. During the American Civil War, Colonel Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson led a Confederate raid across the Potomac River from Virginia. Attacking the rail lines east of the town, they captured 56 locomotives and 300 rail cars. The trash train is led by a road slug based on a GP38, with a GP40-2 master. Four different loco types there: ES40DC, C40-8W, ES44AH and AC44CW. Continuing our journey further east, the next featured location is Gaithersburg. Heading west with a heavy variant Tier 4 compliant ET44AH leading, the other 9 were an ES40DC, 2 SD70 Max, a grey AC44CW, an ES44AH, another ES40DC, another SD70 Mac, an SD70M and a third ES40DC. Taking pride of place next to the station is Buffalo Creek and Gourley 280 number 14. According to the BC&G website, she started life as an 080 switcher, but was converted some years later. Another fine exhibit was this Baltimore and Ohio passenger car. Amtrak Train 30, the eastbound Capital Limited, is powered by a P42 DC and a P40 DC. The usual motive power 36PH-3C replaced yesterday's GP39H-3 on this train. Turning to the section of the Amtrak Northeast Corridor from Washington to Baltimore, we focus on the more accessible but less built-up area of the line between Seabrook and Odenton. After that, there will be a brief visit to the CSX Junction at Relay. Following the Amtrak route north from Seabrook, we utilised two locations in Old Town Bowie before continuing to Odenton. A Siemens ACS 64 races south with train 127, the 4:05 p.m. New York to Washington Northeast Regional Surface, passing temporary platforms while the track is relayed. Another Northeast Regional hauled by an ACS 64, train 188, the 7:10 p.m. departure from Washington to New York. Lumbering unit coal trains seem a little out of place on the high-speed electrified line. On the head of these 130 loaded hoppers are an ET44AH coupled with an older ES44AH. Seabrook is named after Thomas Seabrook, a topographical railroad engineer. In 1871, he purchased 500 acres of land around the site of the planned railway station with the intention of creating a retreat community. By 1880, he had built 3 cottages near the railway station with a park for tame deer. The community developed a relationship with the Washington branch of the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad, which opened in 1872. Stations included Glendale, Seabrook and Lanham. A school was built in 1895. Modern-day Seabrook is an unincorporated community and census-designated place with a population greater than 17,000. Distributed power on the tail is provided by an AC44CW and another ES44AH. The next few trains were filmed next to the Railroad Museum on Chestnut Avenue in Bowie. Train 421 is propelled by a Bombardier HP8 electric. Two views of Power Car 2002 at the head with 2000 on the tail. Amtrak southbound Palmetto service, train 89. Two views of number 33 on the Penn Line service 412. We arrived at Bowie State Mark Station in time to witness the departure of Penn Line train 525, the 810 from Perryville to Washington. This is Penn Line train 414, the 9:30 a.m. from Washington to Baltimore Penn Station. The 9:25 a.m. departure from Baltimore to Washington is Mark Penn Line train 425. Another Siemens ACS 64 is in charge of Amtrak Northeast Regional Train 183, the 7:05 a.m. departure from New York to Washington. Two views of Northeast Regional 174, the 1010 from Washington to New York. Amtrak's Train 79, the southbound Carolinian. A few locomotives in the Amtrak yard could be viewed from War Chapel Road. A GP38H-3 rebuilt from a GP40TC. Two MPI GP15 locos built in 2004. And a Mark rebuilt GP40WH-2. Mark Penn Line Train 418, the 1120 from Washington to Baltimore, is powered by the usual MP36PH-3C and a rebuilt GP39H-2 in tow. Northeast Regional Train 84, the 1110 from Washington to New York, is a tad behind schedule. And here comes train 429. It's the 11:35 Penn Line service from Baltimore to Washington. Our last scene here will be a Cellar Express 2164, the 1210 from Washington to New York, with number 2028 on the tail. Before continuing along the Amtrak Northeast Corridor north of Baltimore, we visit the CSX at nearby Relay. The old mainline sub from Point of Rocks will join the Capital Subdivision on the west side to the right of our cameras, with the track running east towards Baltimore Terminal Sub to the left of our cameras. Heading towards the Baltimore Terminal Sub on the old mainline sub from Point of Rocks. These hoppers are hauled by an ES44AH and a relatively new Tier 4 compliant ET44AH, with an SD40-2 being ferried third in line. The RelayMaryland.com website includes a fascinating brief history of Relay. In 1830, Relay was the first town created by a US railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio, as a change point, or relay, for horses hauling the first scheduled railroad cars in the United States. The first horse-drawn car on the B&O ran from Baltimore to Relay on the 24th of May, 1830. The first hotel on the B&O was the Relay House, built the same year. The Tom Thumb, often recognised as the first successful steam locomotive in the US, ran from Baltimore to Relay on the 28th of August 1830. When constructed between 1833 and 1835, the Thomas Viaduct was believed to be the largest multi-arch railroad bridge built on a curve. The world's first telegraph poles were erected in Relay in 1844. We recommend that you visit the website to learn more of the history of Relay. This is Camden Line train 857, the 5:20 p.m. departure from Baltimore Camden to Washington. The last scene at Relay is train 852, the 443 from Washington to Baltimore. Rejoining the Amtrak Northeast Corridor north of Baltimore, we selected accessible and picturesque locations at Edgewood, Otter Point, Havre De Grace and Perryville. Cameras took up positions on both sides of the track at Edgewood Station before moving on to Willoughby Beach to film trains crossing the Bush River at Otter Point. After a while, the piped music on the station could become a little irritating. A track inspection car was stabled to the south end. The piece is about to be shattered. The Amtrak Washington to New York Acela Express, with power car number 2024 leading, passes Mark Penn Line train 537, the 230 from Perryville to Washington. "30 minutes later, the 1 p.m. New York to Washington Acela Express train 2159 flew through. Power car number 2037 was on the tail. Train 2170 approaches the 3 p.m. from Washington to New York, with number 2014 on the tail. Even at this distance, it's clear that a Siemens ACS 64 is on the way in our last scene at Edgewood. This one is powering Northeast Regional Service 171, the 8:15 a.m. departure from Boston bound for Washington. ACS 64 number 624 at the head of Northeast Regional 134, the 3:30 from Washington to New York. Amtrak's Crescent, train 19, with number 625 in charge. Let's take a closer look. It's a 2:15 from New York to New Orleans. Train 2163, the 3 p.m. from New York to Washington. It had clouded over before we arrived at Havre De Grace, so our cameras were placed on the north side of the railroad bridge to make the best of the available light. The following morning we took locations to the south of the bridge and across the Susquehanna River in Perryville. Powered by ACS 64 number 648, we believe this is the late-running Northeast Regional 178, the 4:02 p.m. from Washington to New York. This is the 4:05 departure from New York, the Northeast Regional Service 127 to Washington, with number 604 in charge. The weather has improved a little to the south. Penn Line train 536, powered by number 27, is the 510 from Washington, which terminates at Perryville station, just beyond the bridge. Power cars 2037 and 2006 are head and tail of the 6 p.m. Washington to New York Acela Express 2124. After terminating at Perryville, the MP36PH-3C propels the empty stock south to be prepared for service the following morning. Penn Line train 523 left Perryville at 8:10 a.m. bound for Washington. Now the same two trains viewed from the other camera. At Perryville, one camera is at the station while the other is on the riverbank. This is Amtrak's Cardinal, Train 51, the 6:45 a.m. from New York to Chicago. The loco on Northeast Regional 183 carries the special livery denoting America's Railroad supports our veterans. Ah, the perfect 2+2 family. Some families just have to go 1 better, 2 better, 3, 4. Oh, now you're just showing off. The Norfolk Southern Unit coal train, powered by two SD70M-2s, is joining from the Port Road branch heading south. The first European settlers came to this region around 1622. Before incorporation as Perryville in 1882, the settlement was known as Lower Ferry, the crossing point to Harmerstown, now known as Havre De Grace. Perryville is the northern terminus of the Mark Penn line, serving a population of about 4,500. The substantially larger population of Havre De Grace, nearer 14,000, must travel north across the river by road to catch the train south. We very much hope that you've enjoyed this programme featuring the CSX Transportation Metropolitan Subdivision and the Amtrak Northeast Corridor north of Washington to Perryville, and appreciated the brief excursions to visit the Maryland Midland and the CSX Junction at Relay. Look out for future editions of American Railway that will focus on the CSX Cumberland Sub and explore the railways of Virginia. Thank you for joining us.